Thanks for joining us, Kasper. We are truly excited to hear about the in-house report, something very relevant to a lot of our audience. So yeah, tell us about the report that you guys are doing.
Yeah, so it's actually the 6 years now in a row. We started in 2020 with the first one, and then it's of course evolved, and every year a new question. So it's getting quite comprehensive after all. We survey a lot of people. We survey almost 2,000 people. Then we clean out a lot of the data to get a more a better perspective on things. So it's basically everything from companies with in-house teams, companies without in-house teams. It's both teams in the creative trenches, so to speak, doing the work, but it's also CEOs and CFOs. It's big companies and it's small companies, and it's across Europe, UK, of course the Nordics where we're at, and the US and Canada.
Yeah, so I looked at this slide, and just to get an overview of the types of people that within content production that's in the team structure here. Tell me a little bit about the patterns that you guys are seeing.
So first of all, we kind of ask all the people that we survey, what kind of roles do you have in-house? Because that's a great way to see where it's developing. What we've seen is especially, it started with graphic designers. That's how normal in-house agencies starts. It's so much easier and cheaper to bring someone in to do the brochures and the roll-ups and so on. Then in the 90s, we saw, especially in complex businesses like finance or heavy industry, where it demands a lot of knowledge to produce something. We saw copywriters. Then came social media, so the content creators from social media.
Okay.
Which is getting really big. I mean, in Cannes Lions this year, the creator economy is now bigger than the advertising agency. I was there for the first time in a lot of years, and the entire beach is covered now by tech industries, and they're not really talking to the agencies. They're talking to content creators. They get their own special pass. What we've seen is, of course, the ability to create video, motion, having producers in-house. A lot of companies also in-house that kind of production.
Okay, more high-end productions.
Yeah, for high-end production. And what we've seen the last couple of years is the creative people. So that's the top creative thing. We normally divide it into 3 tiers. Tier 3 is production, banners, graphic design. Tier 2 is content creation, and Tier 1 is lead creative agency stuff, okay. Driving the campaigns and so on. And what we're seeing at the moment is that more companies just in the last year, and again here in the 26 numbers, are bringing in chief creative officers, creative directors, chief design officers, and so on. So they really want to have that control
of the brand,
of the creative stuff, but also the brand, of course.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of similar to what we saw 10, 15 years ago, where companies started bringing in brand managers to have a brand control person. When you're working with a lot of different agencies and a lot of different people, then it also makes sense to have a common creative layer. Right.
What tends to be the trends that are driving this for in-housing? So like having it closer to the brand, something you can control, maybe output. What are some of the, from a broader perspective, the strength of in-house that drives these decisions?
Normally it's control. A lot of them are driven by cost. That's how it starts. Boring. But it's time to market as well. Things are changing. There are so many different formats, but also things in the world that you need to adapt to. So having to spend 2 months or 3 weeks on a big production, then it's outdated the moment it's done. So I think having that kind of agility to work with things.
One of the other things I saw in the report here talked about the challenges, and I'm sure that will probably resonate well with our audience in-house teams here, is building a robust creative strategy. Sounds like something that's been added recently, and also these investments here indicate that. And then downward pressure on budgets, which is an old classic.
Yeah, I think those are the boring too, but yeah, I agree. So I think there are, keeping that creative strategy, I think when we see people bringing in creative people, our company bringing in creative people, we're right now seeing that they're also struggling because some of the things we know from the advertising world, from agency world or production world, is a lot of structure in how we do it. And this is a great idea, so we don't need to explain it. When you work corporate, it's a different thing. You need a lot more structure. You need a lot more of argumentation and so on to get through. So having that structure, having people believing in creativity is a big struggle. Then I think one of the bigger things is always being swamped in work.
Yeah.
So in-house agencies, they have, I can't remember the numbers now, but it was like double the amount of briefs going to an external agency and coming in. And I think last year's numbers was 1/3 of the task was totally unplanned. Just do this task.
Yeah.
So having that structure is a big issue for in-house teams.
And that was definitely one of the things that surprised me in the numbers there, that pie chart we have here, to see how big of a slice of the pie that's to other unspecified things. What does the landscape look like? You have it here with the different tiers and how much time that's allocated. So that's typical, saying, okay, we have a good strategy, but then the real world says something different.
Yeah, I think it's just meeting reality. I think it's pretty natural. I've building in-house teams for 15 years. And I mean, everybody's just so happy when you have someone that can help make things look great. So we always joke that the first graphic designer you hire just gets swamped, just get eaten up by HR or finance or the CEO office that say, oh, we can do this now. So
it's the same with video, then we can just have this person do X, Y, Z. Like, demand comes from everywhere in the company. Once they see that the other department has some new great content, we want the same, but within whatever we do. And that's probably a lot of this slice of the pie then, that things that come naturally, organically from the organization that has to,
Now we have this available, so let's use them. So I think it's natural.
But also that must mean from the leadership of just justifying these investments, it must be a very positive thing to say, okay, now we have this resource available, and look, there's so much demand. So there's also the responsibility of shielding them from stuff, of saying what has the highest value for the company. We can't just run around servicing every need.
But one of the things I've had the most success with is building tools and dashboards that actually shows the efficiency, the amount of things we do. So if I was build an in-house agency today, that was the one thing I would focus on first, is getting the tools right. I mean, you can buy them off the shelf like Monday or something like that, and present that kind of stuff, saying, look how much we're doing now, look at the time to market, look at the quality is a bit more difficult to measure, but it could be like revision rounds or something like that.
And of course, a good way to illustrate also is like, here's the other stuff we're working on. And then when a new suggestion comes in, saying, okay, what is that going to replace?
Yeah.
So in other words, we already have that system saying, okay, we can add something, but just tell us what to remove. Yeah. Then management has to say, okay, but wait a minute, all the other stuff we've got going on is also valuable. It's not an infinite resource.
No, I agree, and I would put up a big screen just showing all the things we're doing now. So when people come, say, okay, what should we then not do, or should we prioritize differently? Should we bring in extra people?
And that's probably the challenge, right? That when you're already swamped with work and you have so many requests coming in, so many briefs, and if you don't have the structure and the workflow in place, then it's all about executing and getting stuff done. You're never really focused on, well, the workflow. How do we do these things? How are we structured in a way that there's a system in play?
It's not that often that when you build an in-house agency that you just say, oh, could you wait a minute? I'm just going to build this for the next 3 months and make sure that everything is running, and then we turn it on. I mean, normally you say, can you do this? And can we start on Monday? And then say, yeah, okay, let's go. Yeah. And then you're laying the tracks as you're driving the train. So it's very much, hit the ground running and building
once you
stuff.
have established that culture, then it kind of stays.
Yeah. So I think, and that's why you still need that external agency, external providers, people who can actually come in on top and come with their expertise, because the people working in-house, they also get swamped, and sometimes they lose their edge on ideas and new ways of seeing things. I've been working places where we kind of invented our own words because we were just, walking around in our own echo chamber, and didn't have that outside-in perspective, didn't have the reality check.
And what trends are you seeing in terms of this insourcing specialists, and what is there any sort of broader learnings across maybe multiple industries, and like how to utilize external specialists in a good way, in a dynamic way, or is it more of a longer term relationship? Any trends?
I think what we're seeing right now is, companies bringing in creative, let's say the owner of the creative process. So that could be people sitting in agencies coming in and actually have that creative touch and knowing, is this good or is it bad? And then it's a lot about control. So again, it's back to tooling. And then it's about knowing when to invite someone in, knowing what to do. So when you're doing a big production, also remember to shoot this and that. Have those lists of things that you need to do. Turn the camera the other way around to shoot that. So when you're out there having the control of all the rights, GDPR stuff, can we use this in all markets? That's a big task for in-house. Well, it's always been like that, but it's just seemed like it's when you're bringing things in, you need to have that control, or you need someone external to have that control.
So one of the things that struck me a little bit as I was going through your report was this workflow and briefs, and I think that resonates well with our audience, is that there's so much going on. There's so many requests coming in from the organization and so forth. What are some of the patterns that's seen here?
First of all, I was also surprised the amount of things coming in and just the pure scale. Even in smaller companies, they are getting swamped with tasks to do. So I think first of all, it's also the amount of unplanned things, which is something you could do something about. But I think it's around 1/3 of the briefs coming in, and at all in-house agencies combined, are just unplanned. Okay. Just do this. Then it's also a time pressure. I think it's because you're available, you're there, you're sitting just down the hall. So it's so easy to go down and say, can you do this and that? And it doesn't really come with a cost. I mean, when you're external, everything you kind of think about what you're doing. But here it's like, oh, it's free. It's just, I can just ask this guy because he's there anyway, so he can just do it.
And is some of that being pulled back where we're saying, well, maybe quality over quantity? Is that a trend, or is the demand just like the externalities of this? There's so many channels, we need to do so many things. Also internally in the organization, we have all this demand. Is there a push back towards some greater creative ideas?
The short answer is it depends, because it's different. We don't, to be honest, I don't see it in the 26 numbers that the people are getting less briefs. But I see it from the school, and when I talk to bigger in-house agencies, they are kind of saying we need to raise the bar and do less but better work. But at the same time, you also, I mean, there are a trillion channels and formats that you need to be on. So it's a thing that goes both ways, I think, to be honest. I think what companies that are succeeding with this are doing is getting more control, are building tools or ways of working where they are actually mapping all the things they are doing, not just putting post-it notes on a wall and tearing them down when they're done, but actually tracking and trying to figure out how long does this take.
And so actually juggling the fact that we do have output, like there's so many things we want to do and we do need to service all the channels and everything, but on the other hand, we also might want to work on something that's a bit more higher production value, better creative ideas. So finding that right mix of getting stuff done, maybe even getting stuff done a little bit faster, so we do have time to work on some bigger ideas. Also finding somehow that mix Is that part of any of the findings
Yeah,
that
I
you're
think
seeing?
so.
How that is juggled, so to speak?
So the companies that are working well with this, they are doing, better planning. They are when they are shooting, they're shooting more. So they do have an extra camera on set. They are shooting. Can we also do this small idea when you're in this location? Can we shoot something else? Can we write additional stories? Can we plan 2, 3, 4 months ahead and do something and then actually use it? That's also a big issue. So planning, knowing what you have, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time you.
That's definitely some of the patterns we've seen as well, is that when we start saying, well, how you recycle and how you have this kind of like mindset of capturing stuff for a bit longer purpose than just what we need right now, can be a little bit of a challenge for the content teams to kind of bridge that gap. But once you get there on the other side and you start having a roadmap, you start having content you can use a little bit longer and so forth, and you start seeing the wins from those things, that's when output really goes up without necessarily having to spend that many more resources.
Yeah.
And so, of course, also reporting to management of saying that whatever money we put into content production, the ROI goes up when we're able to.
Yeah. And then, because then you can do more at the same time and you get more out of it.
And what I saw in here, how to define success. So you talk about output versus cost. So in other words, ROI, how can we recycle, number of briefs and so forth going up. What are some of the findings that you're seeing here in terms of how to define success?
So there are, of course, always two ways of looking at it. So the one is the actual creative input. Google said a couple of years back that 70% of effectiveness from any assets comes from the creative idea. So looking at the creative and actually understanding that creativity is a huge value driver, and it actually makes more sense to spend time on doing one thing great. Then on the other hand, there is the in-house effectiveness, utilization of people, creating more speed, time to market, speed, mapping that, having that shown. I mean, like big dashboard. So can you translate easier? Can you save money and spend them better? I think that's the other side. So it's two things kind of going different directions. But if you want to have a successful in-house team, then when we talk with some of them that are really successful, we can see that they're doing both.
Then a little bit about, as you just talked about, now having a structure and a tech stack that supports the creative team and the content team to actually get stuff done. What are some of the findings there? These numbers are, of course, just over a year old. So, ChatGPT is, of course, higher than what we're seeing here, I'm assuming. But what are some of the learnings around this? What kind of a good stack? What's needed to get the job done?
I think what we've seen the last, 4 or 5 years in the report is that having damn asset management systems makes more sense. But I think what's really coming in now is the ability to tag files and use them, because I've been working with big companies that has a lot of assets created, but they have never used because people can't find them in that big swamp of things. It's so old-fashioned file structure that you need to, campaign name, year, and so on. So I think having the ability to find your files and actually use them is a big thing that I think is coming now, because you don't need a file structure. It's more like tagging and recognizing files based on AI recognition and so on.
So essentially, you're sitting on gold, but you don't know it yet. Like there's potential in your archive that could be versioned and repurposed in ways, if it's discoverable.
Yeah, I was just talking to a big Danish beer company a couple of weeks back, and they shoot foam on a beer 2 or 3 times a month, even though they already have that in the bank, and it's basically the same picture they're shooting. But it's just like, it's easier to bring in someone and do it a bit different, just because it's too complicated to go into that archive and find the file. And I think it's the similar.
and the paper trail, of course. Who owns the? Can we really purpose it?
Yeah. So having all all that data available is I think is a big thing.
So when we look at the main priorities the next 12 months, and of course this is from last year's report, I don't know if the numbers are roughly the same, right? Improving the effectiveness, improving the process, reducing costs. It's not exactly new topics. So take us through what's being prioritized.
No, and I think that's the funny part. It's the same. It's kind of the same numbers and the same trends for the last 4 or 5 years. It's effectiveness, it's cost. I would say it would be great to have the same budgets, but use them wiser, in a more creative way, scale smarter than just do a lot of stuff. But it is the same priorities. It's almost everywhere we see that in-house teams are growing, and they are growing in the more creative space. But at the same time, they all say that we are getting more tasks. We need to do more. We need to expand the room that we are in, and also do a bit of this and a bit of that. So, but I would say it's especially in the motion area. It's video, it's photography as well, and then there are still a lot of social media channels that you need to have something on, and a lot of people are still doing that a lot. So I think that's basically where it is.
So to conclude a little bit, what you're saying is that the good idea and the creative team seems to be having somewhat of a bounce back. So in other words, having and investing in a good creative foundation for the company, like what's our tone of voice, where we're trying to go, what kind of stories is relevant for us. Once you have that in play, it might even make it easier for the actual content team to go out and produce something, because now they have the guidelines, they know within what circumstances and how things should be produced. Is that sort of like a fair assessment of where?
Yeah, I think so.
And does that vary a lot in terms of where we are geographically in the world? I noticed that in the report, at least, that, or is that a universal sort of?
I think it's pretty universal.
Okay.
It's very common. I mean, the surprising thing is that no matter how you twist the numbers, it's pretty much the same. We had, and it changes, because when we started doing the report, there was nobody was talking about AI, and it's just so it's kind of funny. But and we had traditional big in-house teams in France and Spain, and it's the same. It's the same thing. They are all talking about tech and stuff, but in reality, it's producing more.
So, what's your overall recommendations for in-house teams out there? What should they prioritize?
I think they should prioritize on taste and creativity. I think the tools are helping us, but what really will bring in-house teams forward is focusing on better ideas that you can actually scale. So the creative ideas that makes every next step so much easier. It's so much easier to produce a lot of great smaller stories when you have a bigger idea. I would invest in tech, of course, but I would also invest in quality, because I think with a lot of AI, everybody's going to do a lot of the same. And I would invest in tech, keeping track of what I'm doing, because as we saw in the numbers, we are swamped in unplanned tasks. So the ability to plan and show what you're doing and prioritize and deprioritize is going to be super important right now.
Great. Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.